Et pour parler justement de l'entrepreneuriat,
female entrepreneurship.
Vous, tout d'abord, Myriam Brigui,
Obviously, we have two women with us. Myriam Brigui is head of network management at Proparco. Hello, Myriam. And video conferencing all the way from Johannesburg, we have Sibi Diabira, who is regional director for Southern Africa. Hello, Sibi. I'll be right with you. Myriam, women play a key role in Africa's economic fabric. What about you? Did it always make sense that you needed to support them? Let me start by saying hello to the two of you. Obviously, it made sense. It makes more than just sense. You have to understand that women and female entrepreneurs are key drivers for the economic and social development of Africa. And we have figures that bear that out already. We're talking excellent dynamics in terms of female entrepreneurship. Yeah, there may be differences between one country and another, but 24% of women are entrepreneurs in Africa versus 11% in Asia and 8% in the Middle East. Here's another figure for you. 58% of African self-employed entrepreneurs are women. That's how buoyant entrepreneurship is in Africa. And lastly, this means wealth creation in the order of $200 billion generated by female entrepreneurs, according to current estimates. In other words, female entrepreneurs potentiate growth. They leverage results. However, the reality is, or rather, the reality is fraught with inequalities, social inequalities, because of cultural aspects. And unfortunately, these cultural impediments are still around in 2021. There's unequal access to education, to information, to networks, and these are all important points. And we'll discuss this some more. It's difficult for women to access funding. There's still inequalities between men and women in terms of accessing funding. You have to understand that fewer than 30% of women in Africa have banking privileges and fewer than 5% have access to credit lines, versus double that amount when it comes to men. And this is a very important aspect that lies at the heart of Proparco's strategy and, of course, at the heart of the Choose Africa initiative. Thank you very much, Myriam. Sibi, you've heard, Myriam, the dynamics of female entrepreneurship in Africa are contrasting but very interesting nonetheless. What can you tell us about South Africa, which is a country you know well? As Myriam rightly said, this is such a buoyant trend, both in Southern Africa and the Indian Ocean, and these are the two regions that are being covered by the regional hub in Johannesburg. Let me give you an example. In South Africa, a lot of incentives have been initiated by the South African government to try and support female entrepreneurs. And not just them, but also an even more vulnerable population. I'm referring to Black female entrepreneurs. And the government is supporting them via Black empowerment initiatives. Despite all these measures, and this is the feedback we're getting from the field, despite these measures, unfortunately, in a population comprised of over 50% women, inequalities remain. So South Africa is gradually gaining ground in all of these rankings and the various studies that have looked at female entrepreneurship. However, much remains to be done in order to improve women's access to financing. And I believe that some of the products or tools that Proparco makes available can help fill the gap and solve the problem. Thank you. Sibi, stay with us. Now, let's take a trip to Tunisia. We'll get back to this in a minute, but let's take a hands-on example. Let's discuss Proparco's partnership with INDA. Now, INDA is quite the institution in Tunisia. Roll video.
Nous avions commencé à penser au microcrédit en 1995, quand nous avions posé la question aux femmes, pourquoi vous ne travaillez pas? Et la réponse était très claire, parce que nous n'avons pas accès au capital. La microfinance ou le microcrédit redonne le pouvoir aux femmes, c'est pour ça qu'en anglais on parle d'empowerment, leur redonne le pouvoir qui leur a été enlevé pendant des siècles, la confiance en elles-mêmes, et leur rend leur pouvoir décisionnel. Donc quand on a de l'argent, on peut prendre des décisions, on a un rôle.
بحكم اني انا معروفه بالكدا بالكدا وعند وين ما يجوا الناس كيف كنتم هكا يجوا يزوروني تقبلي انا بالنسبه لي انا ممكن ياسر ما نعرفش ناويه نخلص القرض هذا ونزيد نعاود قرض ما اكبر ولحد الان معناتها نحب نتعامل مع عند الاخر معناتها لين نقول انا يس.
Une dame a changé quelque chose en moi, tout simplement parce qu'après mon divorce, je faisais rien, j'étais une femme de foyer et en plus, j'avais pas confiance en moi. Quand j'ai parti à Inde, qui m'a donné la repousse que vraiment vous êtes une femme et vous pouvez faire quelque chose. Et son aide, c'était moral avant tout.
Alors Sibi, peut-être un commentaire sur ce qu'on
Sibi, how about a quick comment on what we just heard? Microfinance truly makes a difference in women's lives. Is that the right tool? Yes, I do believe it is. By way of example, and if we look at microfinance institutions, both in Tunisia and in South Africa, well, there is an MFI that we met in this country, and it's been around for over 30 years, and this institution decided to finance women only, or rather 90% women, and they started operating in one of the poorest regions of South Africa, and this is an entity called Staff, and they provide microloans that are solidarity-based. In other words, the loans are given to groups of women. And from a financial point of view, what we find is that the rate of default for these women, for these groups of women, are extremely low. So microfinance is an important tool, but there are others. It may not be a silver bullet. I'm sure we can discuss this further with Miriam, but in terms of scaling, we, Proparco, also need to support these female entrepreneurs using other tools, such as direct support. In other words, loans to women or to companies that are larger than these small operations. We may need to go through partners. As we said in the previous sequence, we may need to go through investment funds, and sometimes these investment funds need to undertake commitments. We may need to work through retail banks, and some of them may have undertaken commitments to support these female entrepreneurs ahead of time in a more proactive way. Thank you, Sibi, for emphasizing the excellent cohesion and consistency between these different types of solutions that are part of this continuum of financial tools deployed by Proparco. Let's say a few words about the global trends. We know that COVID, unfortunately, has significantly worsened inequalities across the world. What about gender inequalities? Has the crisis affected women more? I wish I could have said no. Unfortunately, we find that across the world, and not just in the countries where we operate, that women have borne the brunt of the crisis. The main reason, or rather one of the main reasons, is that, as we all know, non-essential services and activities were shut down for months in most countries. In South Africa, was faced with such restrictions for nearly 8 months in 2020. And so women are often exposed. And in the countries where we operate, there's no safety net, or it's very limited. And obviously, this has created vulnerabilities and made inequalities worse. And we see this every day. We see this frequently in our discussions and in the latest research out of South Africa. Just recently, I was reading a study in Botswana, and they explained that the number, or rather the rate of female entrepreneurs dropped by 8 to 10 points throughout the period. Unfortunately, this is the aftermath of COVID, and hopefully this trend will turn around very soon. Thank you, Sibi. And hopefully Proparco's ambition will play an important role in terms terms of achieving gender parity. By 2024, Proparco wants to focus 25% of its financing to female entrepreneurs via different initiatives. For example, the 2X Challenge. Yes, absolutely. The 2X Challenge is an initiative that Proparco is involved with, alongside other development banks. This challenge was initiated in 2018, and it's even more interesting and makes even more sense now, amid the crisis, and bearing in mind the impact of the crisis. The goal of this initiative is to support financing schemes for companies that are owned by women, run by women, or companies that themselves support gender equality in their ranks. This may mean direct or indirect support, so either direct financing or intermediation, and the financing is provided on the basis of rather simple criteria, which enjoy international recognition. By way of example, we're looking at the leadership level of women within companies, and the fact that a company may be owned or founded by a woman or not, and also the number of females jobs, female jobs within the company. You need at least 30 to 50% women occupying jobs within the company. That's one of the criteria. And also the leadership positions occupied by women. That's important as well. So that was a little bit of background information regarding the concept behind the 2X Challenge. Now, alongside other development banks, Proparco undertook to finance $3 billion over the 2018-2020 period. We have greatly exceeded this objective. We now stand at $4.5 billion at the end of 2020. Now, in terms of Proparco, if we drill down a little bit, we're delighted to have already supported 34 different projects which have received the 2X Challenge qualifications. We're talking almost $500 million that have been earmarked to develop gender-based projects. And we have undertaken to bring this target to 25% of our commitments and loans by 2024. That's extremely clear. The indicators are very clear. Let's take an example regarding this initiative. Proparco made an equity investment in the ADP3 investment fund. Can you tell us more about that? This is a beautiful project, an excellent equity investment in many different ways. This is a fund that supports the intervention and investment strategy designed to support VSEs and SMEs in Africa. This is a very buoyant trend and strong commitments to achieve gender parity. You have to know that the fund itself was founded and is being run by a woman. And this woman currently manages $1.7 billion via 3 different funds. And the third fund is called ADB3. And this fund has undertaken commitments with development banks, including Proparco. And these banks have invested into ADB3 to invest, or rather to promote both gender equality within the managing company. And this company has achieved 2X Challenge qualification as well. This company itself has women in 30% of its governance position. And also, this is true for the companies in which the fund is investing. So it's undertaken a strong commitment to invest into companies that have a strong impact on gender equality. So it's a beautiful project. It is the first 2X Challenge flagship fund. And once again, this demonstrates that impact, investment, and profitability go hand in glove. Thank you. Now here's another example. Let's travel to Senegal. More specifically, Dakar. And let's learn more about this responsible company which is being run by a woman who employs just women, but who contributes to the local economic development. Yes, it is possible.
Les produits sont à base d'arachide noix de cajou. On a des produits très innovants, des produits sains. On développe d'ailleurs cette culture de snacks sains avec des produits avec une très grande qualité gustative. Nous avons à peu près 90% du staff qui vient de la région, donc qui viennent de Rufisque, de Cœur-Niaïlo. Donc on peut dire que nous avons un impact dans le développement de la région. En plus du financement, Teranga Capital nous a beaucoup apporté dans la gestion de l'entreprise. Aujourd'hui, nous avons un conseil d'administration qui se fait tous les 3 mois. On a la chance d'avoir avec Teranga l'assistance technique. Nous savons faire aujourd'hui calculer les marges que nous faisons sur tous les produits parce que nous avons mis en place une mission de consulting en comptabilité analytique avec Teranga.
Alors, comme Vincent me faisait
So, as Vincent just pointed out to me during that short report, it's a company that employs 85% of its workforce are women. Not 100%, I got a little carried away there just before. But what would you like to say, Miriam? I think this is another shining example of what we try and see more broadly throughout Africa, because there is so much wealth that women can create. Female leadership is so important. This is a responsible company here, and it's a company that acts and operates in a very responsible way across the entire value chain. It brings value to the country because it employs people, it employs women. It's for that reason that I think this is a fantastic example of the sorts of projects that we want to support, and it is very much in line with Proparco and Choose Africa. We're going to stay in Senegal with the end of this section on women in business. We'll be talking about Kadi Nakolima in Dhaka. So she has been a business owner for some 10 years now. She chose to move back to Senegal after having travelled to France for her tertiary education. She founded Nest, a healthcare facility for mothers and their children, and she was funded by I&P, a major partner of Proparco. Hadi, hello.
Merci d'être avec nous. Alors, après quelques années, avec quelques années de recul, quelle est votre expérience?
Thank you for joining us. So, now you've been in business for some years. What is your experience as a female business leader? Well, when I think about my experience as a woman in business, I would say that it actually took me quite some time to realize that me as a young woman, that would have an influence on my professional relationships with people, with financial partners, corporate partners, and the like. I wasn't very aware of the image that I was giving off as being a young female in business. But gender and age are so important in our company, in our country. For example, I remember there was one time I was pitching my business idea to some investors. It was a pitch that I'd been working on for some time. At the end of my pitch, one of them came up to me and said, well, you've got everything that you need to be able to get our funding. And then he finished off by saying, we really feel that someone else had a bit of influence over the pitch, one of your advisors. And that's when I realized that everyone has certain biases that affect their view of the world, and gender is one of them. It's a main one. Gender plays such a massive role in our professional relationships, partnerships, whatever the case may be. And in your business, how were you affected by the crisis? So we work in women and children healthcare. So we weren't very much affected by the crisis, certainly compared to other sectors like tourism, hospitality, education. So we continued having patients coming in, pregnant women, sick children. But that said, I don't really think we have been able to truly, fully assess the impact that COVID is going to have on health across our population. I think there's going to be a lot of collateral damage that we will see in other sectors because so here there are going to be follow-on effects in maternal healthcare, children, when it comes to non-transmissible diseases. And we'll see this around the world because a lot of these illnesses, they were put on the back burner to give more impetus to care for the pandemic. So what about women in business and making it easier for them? I'd like to talk about Senegal. Senegal is a country that I am most familiar with. For me, in Senegal, I think female entrepreneurship is something that has been quite present for some time now. It is such an integral part of our culture. My mother was a business owner. She ran a business that covered a number of countries: Senegal, Turkey, Egypt. My mother, she too was a business owner. And even today, we can see that there is a lot of women in business. But that said, there's something that I've observed. Once you're in a company that goes above a certain size, you start seeing fewer and fewer women. There are very few women who have been able to get their business to take it from an SME and scale it. Now, this is something that I find quite interesting, almost concerning. It raises a number of questions, especially when it comes to accessing money, equity when you're a woman, about scaling when you're a woman. It's about having access to public tenders. Because I think there are certain barriers, invisible barriers that are in place, the biases that I was talking about earlier. Why don't women win bids, despite the fact that they have all the figures and the statistics on the side, despite the fact that they are credible, competitive business owners? And do they have the same access to capital, to the markets? I'm not sure, and I think it's essential for big companies, not just in SMEs, to have women in management positions, investment funds, investment committees, to have women around the table so that we can break down these biases, so that we can have true equality, so that women can also have access to these opportunities, women who have proven their worth. Thank you so much for telling us your own experience, Khadi. All the best.
Alors, on le voit bien, Choose Africa appuie des projets généreux.
So, Choose Africa. Choose Africa supports a number of projects that are generous, effective, useful projects, and it has actually given rise to a number of questions that we have for our live feed. We have one here for you, Miriam. This question comes from Miss Kwame.
And she asks,
Accra,
how can I
Ghana.
connect with women investors to get more capital and to expand my business?
Merci pour cette question qui, je trouve, fait bien écho à ce qu'on vient d'entendre.
Thank you very much for that question. It is right in line with what we just heard. What I could say first and foremost is that at Proparco, we have local representation in Accra. So I would encourage the lady who asked the question to reach out to Proparco, the AFD group, who also have local offices. And it's a fantastic way to reach out to our networks. Also, on top of financial support, we provide extra financial support. Proparco is so much behind that. AFD Group also provides a number of tools to support customers, partners, financial institutions, investment funds with whom we work. And we put those people in touch with our customers, depending obviously on where they are in terms of their business cycle. On top of that, we have an international network, an African network within Proparco. And through that network, we can create connections between the lady who asked the question and other investors, maybe female investors, so that all of our projects being carried forward by women can have access to this across the African continent. And just on that, one final point, again talking about women in business, we think it is so important to focus on mentoring, networking, and the like. For that, we have staff in the field who are there to open up communication channels to really help these women. Thank you so much, and all the best to everyone we've heard from. Thank you, Miriam, as well. So we've just seen that Proparco and its partners provide support to VSEs, SMEs, startups. Inclusion is also a key value behind Choose Africa. So the Choose Africa initiative tries to reach out to as many people as possible, and we'll see more about that in the next session.